This is the changing face of Katie Price. Glamour girl turned global icon. But what does the future hold? This is your chance to see her face transformed beyond recognition when we give you an exclusive look at Katie Price, age 75.
When you walk into a bar or a club, literally everyone turns.
I was absolutely flabbergasted at her beauty.
She is perfectly formed.
The boobs, the lipstick and the hair.
Blonde, brown,
A lot of makeup.
It's like Crystal Barbie on crack.
She's beyond scary to men now.
The cartoon-like figure we've come to know as Jordan. Those ginormous breasts in that tiny little frame.
She has got a business head.
She's really very bright.
She's worth millions.
She just loves to see herself in the press.
It's no holds barred with Jordan.
This is the changing face of Katie Price. She's gone from fresh-faced teen with girly curls to the fantastic plastic page 3 pin-up who discovered the value of looking larger than life. She stripped back to basics in the jungle and emerged a sleek and savvy businesswoman. She knows the price of perfection, but what if she stopped paying for it? This is your chance to see her face transformed beyond recognition when we give you an exclusive look at Katie Price, age 75. And we'll be going back in time to the days before brand price, before the jungle, and before all the boobs and Botox to see Katie as nature intended, right back to that bonny baby in Brighton. We'll be revealing her big ambition.
She wanted to be Britain's answer to Pamela Anderson.
We'll be looking at the all-new Katie that emerged in the jungle.
Didn't moan, didn't whinge, just got on with it. And she looked great under the most horrible circumstances. And I think that's when she turned around public opinion.
Why is her love life so disastrous?
Her life is just one series of quite explosive car crashes, relationship-wise.
And why can't she stop putting her body under the knife?
When you watch them on the TV shows, like, please, no more plastic surgery.
You're going to have to one day just stop and think, I am how I am. Am I going to accept it or carry on this roller coaster ride of surgery?
Over the years, her appearance may have changed, but our interest in her has stayed the same. The media just loves Katie Price, and why wouldn't they? Her face shifts magazines and her body stops traffic. Katie Price lives her whole life on the public stage. You can love her or loathe her, but one thing you can't do is ignore her. Just like her boobs, she's larger than life and right in your face. In fact, the only statistic more impressive than her chest is the number of column inches she gets every week. And her split with husband Peter Andre in 2009 only fueled the press fire.
It's quite hard to spot the moment that Katie and Peter's relationship went down the pan. They looked quite happy right up to the end.
I really thought they loved each other, and I think they really did love each other. I'm terribly sad that it hasn't lasted.
He originally thought he'd married Katie Price, the image that we've met in the jungle, and what he found was he'd actually married Jordan.
They blew hot and they blew fast and they blew out.
And since the split, the press have been keener than ever to get those headlines that sell papers.
The way that she's conducted herself since the breakup of their marriage has been a PR disaster.
And it isn't just her image she's been damaging recently. We all know she isn't whiter than white, but does she really have to be quite so brown?
She's got signs of sun damage on the front of her chest, with pigmentation marks in particular. That sun damage that she's incurred when she was younger is now starting to have an effect on her skin, even at 30.
Katie Price is obviously quite open about the cosmetic work that she's had done over the years, namely cosmetic dentistry, multiple breast operations, dermal fillers that she has to the nose to mouth lines and her lips. It's looking a little bit out of proportion.
You look at pictures of her, you think, is that Pete Burns?
Jordan's got these fake white teeth, these lips which are just like two big giant shiny fish stuck to her face. She just kind of talks like that. Her eyes are so being Botox like that, she can't even talk. Her skin now looks like wood brown. She's had liposuction. Her hair looks like it's stuck on wig. She doesn't look like the original Jordan.
Katie is constantly fiddling about with her features so that there's always a new story, and there always is, whether it's that her tooth job went wrong, whether it's a nose job too far, whether it's a reversal of a boob job, but there's method in what you may see as her madness, and it nets her incredible coverage and a great deal of money.
To me, she doesn't look great. I think she has had too many treatments, and it's beginning to look obvious to most people that that's the case, and I don't think that's a great look.
She's constantly searching for a new look, a new image that finally one day she might think, oh, I'm happy with how I look.
I've seen pictures of her when she was younger, and she was actually quite a pretty girl, and I think perhaps she's been a little bit over-manufactured, almost a kind of Barbie doll pastiche, and that's, for me, not very sexy.
But what if Katie did stop? What if she stopped paying for perfection and let every bag, sag and wrinkle show? Stay tuned as age progression expert Terry Blythe exposes the face of Katie Price, age 75.
I'm a celebrity's worst nightmare because I look for the features, the wrinkles, the sagging skin, I highlight them and predict how somebody might look in future.
But before we put years on her, we're going to get under her skin and go back in time through the many changing faces of Katie to find out what she looked like before the boobs and the Botox.
I know this is a trademark, but, you know, they look like big bags on her chest.
She is much more than a pair of great big pneumatic false boobs. She's false boobs as a platform to total world domination.
This is the changing face of Katie Price. From the fresh and lovely Brighton Belle to the pneumatically upholstered page 3 pin-up, she's discovered the value of looking larger than life. She went back to nature in the jungle and came out as a groomed and gorgeous brand of her own. But what does the future hold for the ever-changing face of Katie? See her transformed beyond recognition with our exclusive look at Katie Price, age 75. But first, we're going back to a time before big boobs and Botox, right back to her peroxide roots as a bonny baby in Brighton. She was christened Katrina Amy Alexandria Alexis Infield. It seemed she was a natural in front of the camera right from the start, and she was single-minded about her choice of career.
I felt Katie had something special, as soon as she walked into my agency. She had all the requirements to be a great model. She was a very pretty girl, she was very photogenic. I loved her long, curly, natural hair. I thought she had a tremendous figure. I saw nothing to work on or improve.
Katie disagreed. The hair was all wrong.
She liked to wear it straight. That used to take up quite a bit of her time. And I think in the end that's why she went down the route of having hair extensions.
That was the first of her many changing faces.
Her name was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. It just happens that my assistant was a Formula One fan, and just Jordan came out of his mouth, and we all went, yeah.
So Katrina got the wave.
Katie probably didn't feel so great about Katie. She thought she needed to create this alter ego, this other identity called Jordan, with big boobs, this, that, the other.
She needed Jordan as a front to protect herself from a world that might see who she really was. Jordan would punch you in the face if you so much as looked at her. Whereas Katie probably wouldn't.
She loved the camera from day one. She was a fantastic model in front of the camera.
I remember when she walked in and I thought, oh Jesus, she was, hello! No, real gobby, really sexy face. We arranged to do a shoot back in London to put on page 3, and she really did take off. I mean, the phones are ringing and, you know, who's that girl, who's that girl?
So who exactly was that girl?
Jordan's early body shape, curvaceous. It was all about the curves, it's all about being sexy. It wasn't about a lean figure, it was allowing herself to really be a woman.
But had she stayed like that, would any of us ever have heard of her? She realised that just pretty Katie Price was one of any number of pretty topless girls. She needed to do something more to turn herself into the cartoon-like figure we've come to know as Jordan.
She wanted a breast enlargement. Readers of The Sun voted that she shouldn't. There was a national poll. It became like a big deal. It was a big tabloid story. She decided to ignore the advice of The Sun and get them anyway. So she went straight to the Daily Star for an increased fee. I think a light bulb went off in her head at that point. And that is, every time I change my body, I can charge money for the pictures.
Katie always wanted to have bigger boobs. I didn't agree with it because I thought she had a fabulous body, small boobs, but you know, really good. But she was obsessed about having big boobs, so I made a consultation appointment with Dr. Prakash, and we went there, and he talked her into having not such big ones as she wanted, but a reasonable size, and she went ahead and had it done. I always remember the first time she looked at him, she went, "Hey, big enough."
At 19, she was a modest size 32C, but 5 years and several operations later, they'd ballooned to a whopping 32G.
You've only got to have one, and then the doors are opened. Having one leads to 2, leads to 3, leads to 4.
She got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and just when we thought they couldn't get any bigger, they got bigger.
It became a bit of a freak show. It's like, God, have you seen them now? They look like they're going to burst. It's like 2 watermelons on a chest. You've got to see them. That kind of wow factor. People needed to see them.
I know this is a trademark, but you know, they look like big bags on her chest, and you know, they make her look, in fact, in my opinion, at least matronly. They're just far too large for her frame.
She wanted to be famous. Not just a topless glamour model. She wanted to be something bigger than that. She wanted to be Britain's answer to Pamela Anderson.
You can say, oh, look how sad, look how pretty she used to be. True, but pretty and anonymous, pretty and penniless, versus cartoon-like and world famous. And when I say world famous, I mean it. I mean, she's been on the cover of Playboy magazine because she had the vision to restructure her body.
But the boobs were only stage 1 of the transformation into Jordan. Stage 2 was putting on her face.
What she does know is how to make herself into that person who is Jordan. And when I was doing her makeup, she just kept, more, put more on. Oh, you can go stronger there on the eyes. You can put more. And in the end, I was really plastering it on.
I don't think I've ever wore so much makeup on my face, ever.
If you think it's heavy, whether you think it's flattering, it's not. That's not what it's about. It's about Katie. It's about how she wants. People love the way she looks. Amazing cheekbones and amazing eyes, whether they're black, blue, gold, green, with incredible eyelashes. So of course it's quite Vegas, but Katie can get away with it because it's Katie Price.
Jordan's look is down to herself and her hair and makeup artist, which is Gary Cockrell. She's really good buddies with Gary, and he does a sterling job at creating the brand Jordan. Whether that's down to Gary or whether it's Jordan or whether it's a 50-50, I don't know.
But it's not just her makeup bill that would make your eyes water. Those hair extensions don't exactly come cheap.
When most of us girlies want to get our hair done, we just pop down to our local salon, or we might drive, let's say, an hour maximum. But not for Katie. She flies over to LA, let's say 4 times a year to get her hair extensions done. And guess how much that costs? A whopping £15,000.
Blimey, who knew looking that cheap could be so pricey?
She has harnessed a particular sort of style, whether that's a sort of wagtastic look.
Katie has never known how to dress anything but sexily. The first shoot I did with her, she was wearing a see-through dress with a thong underneath it, and she was stopping traffic on Crickerwood High Street.
Don't look at her and go, oh, she's a style icon, she's like Carla Bruni or Kate Moss or Cheryl Cole. You look at her and you think, oh, she's a bit like tacky, a bit, I don't know, she just kind of gets it wrong all the time.
As far as that style is concerned, if you have a good bosom, show your bosom. If you had a good bum, show the nape of your back. But she takes it 25–30% further down the line, and it's car crash couture.
I think the look that Jordan has is, you know, it's like Crystal Barbie on crack. She wears no knickers, she wears leg warmers with high heels, she looks like trailer trash, she's Miss Piggy crossed with Barbie.
No, but what do you really think?
Yes, she's become an icon of our times for all the wrong reasons.
Fancy a look of my tasty bits.
Jordan
Jordan's body shape in the very early days was really, really voluptuous, and it was a man's dream.
Ready when you are, G.
You see the way that men reacted to her, and being actually out with her and seeing the way men reacted to her was really kind of like, whoa.
As she got into her 20s, it was time to move on from Page 3 and kickstart a career in TV. With her own show on Men and Motors. And the title of this brand new show? No prizes for guessing.
Welcome to Jordan's Tasty Bits.
In the early days, Jordan really had an interesting public persona.
Welcome to the show that's bursting with all your favourite fantasies.
Obviously, she really went for the trailer trash, poor man's Pamela Anderson look. Because she had the bleach blonde hair, the extensions in, the trashy clothes, almost like pole dancing Pammy.
The guys loved her because she had all the things that they wanted.
And one thing they didn't. Vanilla Ice!
Hi, I'm Ice.
And I'm Jordan.
And guess what that show was called?
And welcome to another hot edition of Ice with Jordan.
And have a look at what we've got coming up for you this week.
Yahoo!
In Jordan, Katie Price gave the media everything they wanted. A drunken girl who didn't mind getting her breasts out. She slept with famous footballers. She was living a life that we could all point at and go, oh my goodness, and oh really?
And with a love life straight out of a soap opera, there was plenty to go at. After a public bust-up with boy band singer Dane Bowers, she got pregnant by footballer Dwight York. And while she was pregnant, she slept with squeaky clean Gareth Gates. It was hard to keep up, and each time she's been pregnant, the public have had an eyeful.
She was showing her body off everywhere because what she wanted to show, that it's okay to be pregnant and sexy. Demi Moore, again, Vanity Fair, let's ape what's already been before, but in the UK, so we can sell these images to the women's magazines.
This is the modern kind of plastic celebrity living her life in front of the cameras, and it's kind of fascinating car crash telly.
But while we were enjoying her soap opera lifestyle, for her, things were about to get all too real.
She said, oh, I've got something to tell you about Harvey, and she did start to well up and start to cry, but she pulled herself together very quickly.
She had a son with a disorder, and it was just like, those kind of things make us all interested in someone. I know she's a bit rough around the edges, but I kind of got a little bit of a secret liking for her.
I did think it really softened her in the public light, and I think people started to swing around in her favour, really.
Despite baby Harvey's condition, Katie tackled motherhood head-on. One thing you can say about her is that she doesn't moan, she just gets on with it.
Katie Price is not a woman who is prepared to be seen as vulnerable under any circumstances. Even when she had Harvey and she appeared on the front covers of newspapers and magazines, she was dolled up to the nines.
And as a 24-year-old single mum, it was more important than ever to keep the bank manager happy.
Thank you.
And being Katie, some of that hard-earned cash went on plastic.
It's like an addiction.
I remember when she came back from the last lip operation, and she looked like Bubbles the clown.
I don't know whether you've ever been into Ann Summers or not, but they do have these blow-up dolls. And actually, they look scarily like Jordan.
But what if she stopped all that filling, jabbing, stretching and lifting? Later on, we'll be ripping apart the facade as we reveal an exclusive picture of what she'd really look like, age 75. After the break, Jordan strips bare for the jungle and wins herself some new fans.
She was adventurous, she was resilient, she was incredibly uncomplaining, didn't moan, didn't whinge, just got on with it. She looked great under the most horrible circumstances.
They were flirting like a couple of teenagers, and I thought, you know, there really could be something going on here.
She did the worst crime possible. She fell in love on camera.
I'll see you after the break, where you can see some more gorgeous girls on Jordan's Tasty Bits.
This is the changing face of Katie Price. Over the years, she's morphed from fresh-faced teen with natural curls to a perfectly primed Page 3 stunner. She went back to basics in the jungle and then emerged as a sleek and sassy businesswoman. But what does the future hold for the ever-changing face of Katie? See her transformed beyond recognition with our exclusive look at Katie Price, age 75. We'll also be examining her obsession with her looks.
She's no longer physically the same human being.
What she looks for in a man.
She looked out and she saw him and she said, now that is a body.
And we'll be looking at the money spinner that is Brand Price.
I mean, the whole thing has been the most genius publicity stunt ever.
But first, we're catching up with the changing face of Katie in her late 20s when she was contemplating life after glamour modelling.
She was completely unashamed about being a glamour girl, but it was only one aspect. There was Jordan the model, there was going to be Jordan the mother, there was going to be Jordan the wife. For her, it was Jordan stage 1.
Stage 2 was that career-boosting role on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here in 2004.
Done it!
I was so pleased when she went into that jungle because I had a lot of friends that used to say to me, oh, how can you represent that girl, Jordan? She's terrible. And I'd think, no, I really like Katie, she's lovely.
She wanted to show the public the other side of her, the Katie Price side, the side that probably women can relate to.
I don't think anyone had seen her without all that makeup on for a start, so you were physically seeing a different person, but on an emotional level, she really was good fun.
She was really quite natural. I mean, except for like silicone and fillers and extensions.
Straight away she ditched the Jordan image and recreated brand Katie, and the part of that was going into the jungle to show this all-action, I'm fearless type girl with the braids, very Bo Derek looking, all that sort of stuff.
If Katie Price hadn't emerged and all that we'd been left with was Jordan, Jordan would have died a death a long time ago. That character had had her day.
Oh my God! She was adventurous, she was resilient, she was incredibly uncomplaining, didn't moan, didn't whinge, just got on with it, and she looked great under the most horrible circumstances. That's when she turned around public opinion.
As far as I can remember, she went in as Jordan. She was outspoken, she was full of body confidence, she was eyeing Peter across the room, and you know, I could feel there was chemistry going on there.
She wasn't being so crude, she was stripped of the makeup, she wasn't falling out of China White off a trolley, and I think that's when people's perceptions changed, and this is, I think, when also Jordan then decided, actually, I have a chance now to be Katie Price.
It was fascinating to see how many people were absolutely knocked out by how good she looked without any makeup on. Because you think that when you see people with makeup, they need it. Well, she doesn't need it, she wants it. So there's a difference between needing and wanting. Wanting is great, needing is not so great.
I'm old and need makeup. Katie's young and just didn't, and I thought she looked better in the jungle.
You could see her skin glowing, which I thought was fantastic. You know, the little plaits in her hair, that was just to keep her hair back. Very practical. So again, that practical side comes through.
We saw the young girl behind the painted doll. She looked human. We could see her imperfections. We could see that her nose is not a perfect shape, and but also we could see that she's got beautiful eyes, a winning smile, and she was a really attractive natural girl, and that was a shock for me.
Yes, she was going to do the whole no makeup, my hair's in braids, and yet it was still styled. You know, there was a wonderful white bikini, the top was quite tight. There were sort of little things, even within those confines, that she could find to create her own individuality, even though she was wearing a uniform along with the other contestants. There was never any problem when you watch that screen on spotting where she was.
And there was plenty of her on show.
When you look at Jordan's legs, you can see that this is something that can be achieved one of two ways. You can either work hard, remembering that she's someone that loves horses, and so she rides every day, so that gives you a certain amount of muscle tone, and if you work out, you can get it that way. Or you can go the route of having liposuction, which will give you that look, beautiful look. But to maintain it, you still have to work at it.
And while all eyes were on Katie, she had her eye on someone else.
She looked out and she saw him and she said, now that is a body that I really would go for. That's my kind of guy.
And she did tell me once, Kate, that she had a poster on her wall of Peter Andre when she was about 16. That was quite sweet. But I don't think she went in the jungle just because she knew Peter was going in there. I think she went in there to reinvent her career.
They were flirting like a couple of teenagers, and I thought, you know, there really could be something going on here.
It was very clearly that there was sexual attraction, but also she almost became quite camera shy. They would be whispering. It became less performed, and I think that was the point at which most people got the idea that there was something real going on here, a real relationship.
What Pete did when he brought out Katie was he introduced us to the woman behind the caricature.
As men got to know her, as in her fan base of, you know, red-blooded males who bought magazines with her on, her appeal lessened, because A, they got to hear her voice.
I like to get my fist out.
And B, she did the worst crime possible. She fell in love on camera.
Do you remember sitting in the hotel lobby the night I came out of the jungle, and Jordan, Katie, came downstairs, and she was just fully made up, masses of makeup, and her hair had been bleached, and it was out of its braids, and she looked great. Of course she looked great, but gosh, she looked better in the jungle, I thought.
I'm in so much trouble when I get out of here, but I don't give a shit.
After she came out of the jungle, she went straight back to the primped and processed look she had before. But with one new accessory, Aussie hunk Peter Andre. For the papers, this was going to be a marriage made in heaven.
Katie always said when she was in the jungle that if she got married, she wanted it to be one great big, almost Disney fairyland.
The Jordan wedding, I couldn't get enough of it. It couldn't have been any more over the top. There was nothing they missed out. I mean, if you were to kind of sit down and try and think of an idea that they didn't think of to make it more pink, more fluffy, more grotesque, there was no stone left unturned.
It was so surreal. You know, she was the princess for the day. She was in Cinderella's carriage. Peter was her prince. And I wonder whether when you've built something up like that as a fairy tale, whether it's not surprising that at the end of the day, reality can't live up to that if that's what you've set yourself up as your own reality.
She turned into Wedding Day Barbie and he became Ken. There was still something that almost brought a bit of a lump in the throat when they took their vows, when they both started crying.
He was so stricken with love that he was in tears, so many tears, he couldn't actually get his wedding vows out, and she was trembling, holding his arm, sobbing. They were entwined throughout the entire thing. It struck me as a guest as a very genuine love.
She reinvented herself effectively. She gave us a new person to be curious about with new sets of behaviours, including having children, getting married, having rows, and showing herself as a very sharp and keen businesswoman.
And this new family-friendly Katie had gone in for a change of hair colour.
Maybe she wanted to connect with Peter a little bit deeper by saying, you know, well, I'll go down the Greek route, but actually, you know, she really suits being a blonde, but she actually morphed into a completely different character.
That's sending out a message, you know, you don't call me a blonde bimbo, you can't dismiss me as an empty-headed blonde. Look, I've got my brown hair on today, I'm a brunette, I'm a hard-headed businesswoman.
Jordan is an excellent, if cynical, businesswoman. You know, everything she does, she charges for. And I think she learned very well from, like, Pammy Anderson. I mean, she's always been a bit of a sort of pound-stretcher Pammy, if you like.
Who would have thought that this trashy D-list celebrity could turn her fortunes around and become, you know, the businesswoman that she is?
She's always been surrounded by great advisors who have, you know, told her, look, you should bring out your lingerie range at Georgia Asda because it's kind of cheap and accessible, you know, I guess like Jordan.
But Katie was laughing all the way to the bank, bringing out a succession of products with the brand price stamp on them. Everything from knickers to novels. And whatever it was she was selling, there was an outrageous outfit to go with it. She was guaranteed maximum exposure for every launch. It's a marketing man's dream.
She's built up this whole brand which sells perfumes and sells children's books and things like that. I mean, who'd have thought it? A page 3 girl who gets the boobs out suddenly starts writing children's books about horse riding and stuff like that. I mean, the whole thing has been the most genius publicity stunt ever.
She is prepared to give you it all, chapter and verse, if there's money to be made out of it.
She has gone from being a glamour girl to now being a brand name and owning all of her own businesses and all the rest of it.
She is driven. She is driven to be the best and most successful, whatever she does.
She is much more than a pair of great big pneumatic false boobs. She's false boobs as a platform to total world domination, and I think that's where she set her sights.
Eventually, Katie and Peter PLC included a junior branch, with son Junior and daughter Princess Tiani. At this point, Katie decided it was time to reverse the boob jobs, going back to her original size.
She reduced her breasts and made this commitment to becoming somebody more real. I think she probably experienced the world naked, as if she'd actually just walked into the world for the very first time and everybody could see who she was.
And it wasn't just her chest that got smaller.
She has had her nose done recently and she looks so much prettier for it.
Looking at Katie in the picture here where she was in the jungle and comparing it to her more recent picture, it's very clear that the nose has changed. She had a little bit of a bump on the bridge, which seems to have disappeared. That basically tells me she's had a rhinoplasty, or a nose job as it's commonly called.
When she first appeared in the national press, she had a really natural, nice nose but quite big. That's very different now, much more of a Britney Spears nose, Hollywood style, Pammy, generic nose. There probably isn't much of her upper body that hasn't been touched.
She's totally taken all that character away from her face, especially after a rhinoplasty. Her nose just looks like a normal nose now.
And I think the danger is you change one thing, the symmetry of your face doesn't work anymore. You're not used to looking at the reflection that comes back at you in the mirror. So instead of blaming the thing you've had done, you blame the rest of your face. So it's much easier to just carry on. I think it's very, very hard to just say no and to stop doing stuff. There's nothing wrong with her. She needs to stop. She was a pretty girl.
In part 4, you'll see Katie Price as you've never seen her before, transformed beyond recognition at the age of 75. Coming up, will the cracks start to appear on the changing face of Katie?
Katie's looks are her life. If they start to fade, so will she.
Had my Botox filler, so I'm sorted.
She had someone to help her, I had no one.
And what went wrong with Pete?
Jordan and Peter show was quite horrible to watch. It was pretty car crash TV.
When you watch them on the TV shows, like, please, no more plastic surgery.
This is the changing face of Katie Price, the glamour girl whose face sells everything from perfume to pants. But how far is she prepared to go in pursuit of perfection?
I had my Botox filler, so I'm sorted.
And what does the future hold? Coming up, you'll see her transformed beyond recognition when we give you an exclusive look at Katie Price, age 75. By the time Katie Price had entered her 30s, she had resumed some of her partying ways, pursued by the press.
Just before she met Peter Andre, she was trying to lose the whole glamour girl image. Of course, she met Peter Andre, went on this magnificent journey of, you know, being seen as a wholesome, or almost being seen as a wholesome, you know, innocent mother who was promoting horse riding clothes ranges and, you know, kids' books, and she was almost there. But she just couldn't help it.
And as viewers of Katie and Peter stateside found out, all was not well at home.
The Jordan and Peter show was quite horrible to watch. It was pretty car crash TV, especially from a bloke's point of view, because he was just being kind of, you know, castrated on TV, really.
You could see that at some point he was going to rise up and say, enough, enough. And I think that he originally thought he'd married Katie Price, the image that he'd met in the jungle, and what he found was he'd actually married Jordan.
He'd previously gone on record saying he wasn't happy with her having more surgery.
You know, with Peter saying, I really wanted her to stop, and we saw her in LA in the programme having more and more and more.
When you watch them on the TV shows, like, please, no more plastic surgery. You're turning into somebody that I can't, like, connect with any longer. This is all you think about are your looks.
How can you keep a marriage going together under the glare of publicity when you invite all the cameras into your house and you've got people watching you day and night 24/7?
It might seem as though we have watched Jordan's marriage on television. It might appear that we have been allowed a window in on the real Katie Price, but I tell you now, we have not. She has never once allowed herself to appear vulnerable.
It was quite hard to spot the moment that Katie and Peter's relationship went down the pan. They looked quite happy right up to the end.
Including their joint appearance at the London Marathon.
Have you had extra back pain or any
No,
problems?
do you know what?
I
I've
like
got
how
a
he's
really
asking.
good bra, really good
Back
sports
pain?
bra.
Yes, of course.
I've had no problems, and obviously I had them reduced as well, so they're not as big as they were last year or the year before. I can't keep up with them.
As someone obsessed with maintaining a skinny figure, she'd been faced by a horrifying prospect.
When you're training for a marathon, you need carb loading, so she had to put weight on. I remember seeing on a programme with Katie where she was saying, I hate my body, I've had to eat so much and put on so much weight to make it through the marathon, look what the marathon's done to me. And pretty much credit to her, because she knew she wanted to make it through, so she was willing to make that sacrifice. And she did make it, even with injury, she made it through the marathon.
She did it for a great charity, and I know she's very passionate about that charity. So I was all for that. I'm just relieved she didn't do it in stilettos.
But behind all those smiles, there was definite tension.
You know, how many times have we seen kind of, you know, immensely clingy, touchy-feely body language 5 minutes before a breakup?
When I went to do the soap awards, you know, I didn't know who the other guests were going to be or anything. And then when Peter, Andre and Katie walked in, I was like pleasantly surprised because they're just kind of fascinating to watch, you know. There was a bit of animosity between them. There was negative body language, like turning the back to each other, a bit of sniping, and then the next day it all hit the papers.
So after 4 years of marriage, it was all over. And in her first big appearance after the announcement, it was clear to everyone that she'd been on the divorce diet.
This year at the clothes show, Jordan strutted down the catwalk in a tiny white bikini. She is just so thin, it's horrible to look at.
Her body might have been thin, but her makeup was thick.
It was unbelievable the amount of makeup that she had on. It was almost like, come here, I felt like doing what your mum does, getting a wet tissue and wiping it off. But I feel that she does sometimes need that for a bit of extra confidence.
Confidence clearly wasn't lacking on her relaxing break in Ibiza. Sometimes a girl's just got to get away from it all.
Katie, to your left! Katie.
But Katie was about to find out there are some headlines even Botox can't fix.
Since the split with Peter, we've really seen the Katie Price disappear, and instead this wild, party-loving animal of a woman, Jordan, she's back.
Back, front, sides. There was a lot of her on show.
I couldn't quite believe my eyes when I opened up the paper, and she is out there absolutely losing it in Ibiza, getting totally wasted, wearing little incy-wincy bits of gold lame fabric. What's the point of even putting anything on in the first place?
Most mums of 2 or 3 don't go around in gold lame bikinis, you know, and a headband looking like some sort of transsexual Greek waiter.
She was absolutely desperate for it to be sexy, but yeah, it looked revolting.
She looks like a drag queen, you know, a bad drag queen.
She's meant to look kind of dirty, you know, kind of plastic. It's the way she's meant to be, but I just kind of felt a bit embarrassed because I wouldn't wear that, and I'm 22.
I think once you do split up from a partner, I think anyone goes a bit loopy, don't they? That's just women. That's just what they do when, you know, they're moving on.
She's saying, welcome to my bit. Aren't they in great nick? And they are.
So while she partied around Ibiza with various men on her arm, there was one man she wanted off it.
Everybody knows it's a rule of thumb. You don't get your lover's name tattooed on you because you're just going to have it lasered off or crossed out.
She's like, oh, I know, I'll just put a cross through that tattoo instead. I mean, how ridiculously tacky is that?
If you go out with Jordan, history proves that what will happen is there will be some hideous story about how small your penis was. There'll be some hideous story about how bad you were in bed, and very publicly showing you up and sort of kicking the hell out of your ego in national print and on TV. It's a suicide mission. Who would go out with Jordan now? You'd have to be a madman.
Step forward, Alex, the Readonator Reed. Katie enjoyed a whirlwind romance with her cage-fighting dreamboat. She then opted for a second stint in the jungle to try and win back some public favour.
Jordan has her ego in a place now where it needs the constant oxygen of attention. Without attention, you know, I don't think she could exist.
But she got more attention than she bargained for when she was voted for a record-breaking 7 trials.
Get me out, please, I'm scared. I'm so happy just to go. I'm not a bad sports person. I'm really not. I've had enough. I know people at home would be like, why didn't you stay in it, blah, blah, blah.
but they haven't had the experience I've had.
It all proved too much, and on her exit from the jungle, her relationship with Alex hit a temporary setback when she dumped him on live TV.
I've done a lot of reflecting. I think it's best that I'm on my own. I don't want a relationship. I have to think of me and my children, and I am so much happier person.
But then, before Alex could say, I'm a celebrity Big Brother winner, get me out of here, they'd married in Vegas. Oh, bless. And now she's moved into the next phase of her life. Will she ever decide to call a halt to all the surgery?
I worry that, you know, her body size and her big boobs and the incredibly slender body that she's got now, that as a role model for young girls is slightly worrying, because it's like Barbie, you know, which we all know if Barbie was built to those proportions she'd fall over, and Jordan is in that category.
You're going to have to one day just stop and think, I am how I am. Am I going to accept it or carry on this roller coaster ride of surgery?
I think Jordan's problem with surgery is the fact that, you know, she knows at 31 essentially she's over the hill. You know, if in the old days a page 3 girl was considered past it at 25, you know, and I think she obviously, as the years encroach, is going to start to do more and more. And what you saw was essentially a very pretty girl to start with, and now if you look at pictures of her you think, is that Pete Burns?
I wonder now that Peter's gone, was he the restraining hand? Is she now going to suddenly have a whole load more? Or is she going to think, well, actually, I don't want to do any more. Was she doing it for him? It'll be interesting to see whether the split makes her stop or go to the next level.
But what if she did stop, right now, once and for all? Without further surgery, what would she look like when she's old and grey? Terry Blythe is an expert in age progression. She's been applying her skills to the changing face of Katie Price to predict what she'd look like at 75.
Really, I'm a celebrity's worst nightmare because I look for the features, the wrinkles, the sagging skin, I highlight them and predict how somebody might look in future. Katie's actually got very recognisable, a big smile. So what I've done is thin the lips a little bit, darken the teeth and just take away some of that youthful look. She's got a small mole on her cheek, so I've highlighted this, exaggerated it a little bit because this might in time darken. What I've done with the eye area to age her is highlight some of the lines around her eyes, the bags under her eyes potentially, and the sagging eyelids. Give her a different hairstyle, potentially greying, but just a different older woman's hairstyle and clothing.
So we've followed the changing face of Katie Price from her early days as a Brighton beauty, through her time as Jordan, the page 3 pin-up, right up until her reinvention as model, mum and one-woman marketing machine. Her looks are constantly changing, but that doesn't mean she can dodge old age forever, and it's about to hit her right in the face. Stand by for Katie Price at 75. So this is the 75-year-old face of Katie, aged as nature intended. With a Botox-free brow and naturally greyed hair, her eyes have the normal crow's feet and her eyebrows have thinned out over time. Her teeth would darken, and with no fillers, her lips would become thin and puckered. Moles and sunspots would also darken, and her skin would lose elasticity, showing every line and wrinkle. Could this be the future face of Katie?
It's just not gonna happen. She's gonna have jet black hair. Her face will be absolutely immaculate. She'll be a glamorous granny. I wouldn't have it any other way.
I see Jordan turning into a mixture between Miss Piggy and Diana Dawes, crossed with a bit of Mae West. I think she'll be still wearing the same lycra and short skirts, and she'll have just had more surgery.
So what does the future hold for Katie?
I'm in such a good place, you know, I've got a new husband, we can't wait to have children, we're going to buy a house together. We don't just start it all, you know, so it's really fairy tale again.
People, despite her big boobs and her makeup that she dwells on, people do know that she's a real person. She does have 3 kids, she's a mum of 3, and she works so hard, and I think that's why she'll always be okay with people.
Anyway, family show, we'll see you later. Thanks for tuning in.